السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Uh, sorry for being late. There's some issues with the connection. Inshallah, we'll continue with the fiqh of worship. And we had talked about the adhan. We've been talking about the adhan and the way the adhan to be called, and how the adhan is called, and some of the rulings with regards to the adhan and how to do it, and with regards even to matters of tahara related or purification related to the adhan. And then after that, inshallah ta'ala, the next subject in the Kitab al-Salah, in the chapter of the Salah, is the time for the 5 daily Salah, the times for the 5 obligatory Salah. The 5 daily Salah, as we know, this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala obligated upon this ummah and honored this ummah by the 5 daily Salah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored this ummah by elevating and ascending the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam all the way to the 7th heaven to speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give him the order of the Salah in that special trip in Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj. And it was originally 50 Salah, that it became 5 Salah only. And as the Prophet ﷺ said, 5 in actions, but 50 in rewards. خمس في العمل خمسون في الأجر. 5 in actions, but in reality it's 50 in rewards. And therefore, whoever prays the 5 daily Salah as if he prayed 50 Salah a day, that means he had filled the entire day and night with ibadah, with the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's something that Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib rahimahullah, he said, that whoever prays the 5 daily Salah in Jama'ah, من صلى الصلوات الخمس في جماعة فقد ملأ البر والبحر عبادة, that he had filled the earth and the land with ibadah. And therefore the shaitan, he would come to the person in the Salah more than any other time, because that's the objective of our day. This is the most important action in the Salah, in our life, is to establish the 5 daily Salah the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered us. And that's why we should not just say to perform the 5 daily Salah, but to make iqamat al-Salah, to establish it, and to always remember this hadith about the 50 Salah, that if it was 50, we have nothing but to submit ourselves to the orders of Allah. And therefore, if it's only 5, then not to waste them and not to lack the perfectness in them. And one of which is to learn the rulings of matters of fiqh, of how the Salah is to be done physically, and without ignoring what the state of the heart that the person should be upon. So now we're talking about the times of the Salah, the times of the 5 daily Salah, which is all wahy revelation from Allah that Jibreel alayhi salam taught the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. The time of Dhuhr starts from Zawal al-Shams, from Zawal al-Shams. As-Zawal is the time once the sun moves a little bit away from the middle of the skies, where it's in the middle, right on top, in the middle, where the shade, and that's the definition of the Zawal, when the shade starts going into the opposite direction, because the sun had moved to the opposite direction of the horizon. So once the sun in the morning, and if you put a stick in the ground, the shade is in one position. And once the sun starts moving into the other side from the middle of the skies, then the shade starts going to the opposite direction. Once the shade starts into the opposite direction, this is what Az-Zawal is. This is the time for the Zawal of Shams, which is the beginning time of Dhuhr. And the time of Dhuhr is extended all the way till the shade of everything is the like of it. Plus, in addition to the shade of that was present at the time of the zawal. So if it's to be shown practically, that when they used to have these shakhs or the stick that they have on the ground for the mueddin to know the timing for the salah, there's a measurement, or there's a shade that is present at the time of dhuhr, and then when that shade which is to be subtracted from the entire shade that happens when it's the end of the dhuhr. So when the shade of everything becomes the like of it, plus the shade at the time of the zawal, then this is the time of asr. So the end of the time of dhuhr is the beginning of the time of asr. And it's, of course, it's more recommended to be prayed in the beginning of its time. Unless it's extremely hot, then it's recommended to delay it a bit, as the Prophet ﷺ used to do so. And Salatul Dhuhr, as we know, is 4 rak'ah. The time for Salatul Asr starts from the end of Salatul Dhuhr, which means when the shade of everything is the like of it. It's equal to the shade of the object that is placed on the ground, plus the shade of the zawal, of course. And that's what the time of Asr starts. And there's 2 times for Asr, if it's correct to say. There is the Waqtul Fadila, as the ulama they call it, the time of virtue, and Waqtul Darura, and the time of necessity. The reason why they made these 2 times is that there are hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that condemns those who pray Asr when the sun is yellow, when it's close to sunset. So the time of Asr ends with the sunset, right? But once the sun becomes yellow, which is before sunset, then this is where it's the time of ad-darura, meaning that a person should not choose to pray Salatul Asr and to delay it when the sun is yellow. But this is a time of necessity. That means he could not make it in the beginning of its time, in the virtuous time of it. So he had to delay it to the time of necessity. This is the significance of that classification. So the time starts from the end of Dhuhr till the sunset, but it's to be prayed in the time where it's for a person to choose to pray in the virtuous time of it, in the beginning time of it, and not to delay till the sun is yellow. And Salatul Asr is 4 rak'ah. For the time of Maghrib starts from sunset, as we know. Once the entire sun sets in whatever position that a person is in. If a person is in one place, then according to him is when the sun sets. If a person is in the, on the 100th floor, then it's according to his position when the sun sets. So that makes a difference, of course. And of course, with distance, with elevation, the sun would set differently. So according to what the person's position in, then once the sun completely sets, then this is the beginning of time of Maghrib. And it's also to be done in the beginning of its time and not to delay it. But it's extended all the way to Shafaq al-Ahmar, when the red light in the horizon disappears. Once the red in the horizon disappears, then this is the time of Al-Isha. So it's this is the time of Maghrib, and it's of course it's a shorter time. And Salatul Maghrib, of course, as we know, is 3 rak'ah. The Salatul Isha, the time of it starts from the right after the end of Salatul Maghrib, which once the red color in the horizon disappears, all the way to the middle of the night. That's also the waqt ikhtiyari, or the optional time where a person would choose to pray in this time. And from the middle of the night till the time of Fajr, this is also waqt al-darura. This is the time of necessity. That means a person should not choose to pray Salatul Isha after midnight. And midnight is to be calculated from the time of Maghrib or the time of Isha. So from the time of Maghrib till Fajr, you divide that into 2, then this is the middle of the night. So that changes from the summer to the winter time. So this is the time of Al-Isha. It's more recommended to be delayed to the third of the night or even to the middle of the night if a person would pray it in Jama'ah in the masjid, if the people in Jama'ah would pray it like this. But if a person misses it in the masjid, or for women at home, if they delay it, as long as they do not lose other rights and duties in the salah, then it's more virtue, as the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. But praying in Jama'ah in the masjid, of course, what the norm of the people have been is in the beginning of its time. And that's definitely better if a person is not sure whether he become tired later or whether he is not going to be able to fulfill it in the most perfect way. The time for Salatul Fajr starts from the second time of Fajr. They call it, there's the first Fajr and then the second Fajr. The first one is the false one. And the second one, which is the true Fajr, when the light spreads in the horizon. So the beginning of the break of dawn, the break of light, that distinguished or different than the darkness of the night. The first break of the light in the horizon, and then it starts spreading sideways in the horizon, not the one that shoots in the middle of the skies and then disappears. And of course, Salatul Fajr is to be done in the beginning of its time is better. And it's more recommended for the person to pray Salatul Fajr when things are dark. And to, if a person make the Salatul Fajr long, with the Prophet ﷺ used to pray in Fajr more than he would pray and recite Quran and other than Salatul Fajr. Even if when they finish the Salah, people can see each other because of the light, then this is still a good thing and a virtuous thing. And once the adhan of Fajr is called, then it's only to be prayed Salatul Fajr, and before that Salatul Sunnah, Sunnatul Fajr 2 rak'ah, and no more Salah between Salatul Fajr till sun rise, as we will talk about the makruh times for the Salah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أقم الصلاة لدلوك الشمس إلى غسق الليل وقرآن الفجر إن قرآن الفجر كان مشهودا. And many verses in the Quran that talks about the salawat and the importance of it. And all of these different timings have been established by the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and by Jibreel ﷺ teaching the Prophet ﷺ right after he came down from the night of Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj. He came to him and he led him in the Salah, the first day in the beginning of every time of the Salah, and the second day led him at the end time of the Salah to show him the beginning and the end of the Salah. And of course, with the ease of knowing the times for the Salah, with calendars and ways to get to know the timings, then this is valid as long as it's according to what these timing of the Salah are. So this is for the 5 daily Salah times. After that, in the subject of the Salah, since it's with regards to the times of the Salah, then we'll talk about the conditions of the Salah. Like we talked about the conditions of the wudu, there's the conditions for the Salah. And the conditions is different than the pillars of the Salah, that the conditions are something that is not part of the Salah, but something else to be done as a condition for the Salah to be valid. It has to be established. And as we see that for the Salah has conditions, has pillars, has wajibat, and that requires knowledge. And it shows the importance of the Salah. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed, He would have made the Salah just some words that a person say, or something to be done without having to make wudu or facing the Qibla or any of this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most wise. And one of the great things that a person sees in his heart is that the importance of the Salah. When something is important, then people would prepare themselves for it. They would take other things means other than that thing that is important, right? Think of anything important in your life, right, as an important meeting for example, or an important occasion or event or whatever, people don't just, find themselves in the middle of that important meeting or so. People have to prepare themselves for it ahead of times, right? And since the salah is the most important thing in one's life, therefore it has to have preparation before it. That's why when we talk about the khushu' and the perfections of the salah, we have to do and to take these means. But once a person is not really paying attention to the conditions of the salah, or even if he does it with his heart not being present in what he's doing, all of a sudden he finds himself in salah. He's not focused before that. He doesn't know what he did before, or even all of a sudden he finds himself making salam in the salah. This is so much waste. In fiqh matters, it might be the salah that it's valid. He's done the salah with how it's to be done physically, but he lost so much of the rewards of the salah. Because of the importance of it is to take these means, and every measure and every ruling is meant for it to be this way, for the heart also to be affected. So when there's, when the wudu is a condition for the salah, or the tahara is a condition of the salah, something that a person should think about, the tahara and the purification of one's heart. Since we're ordered to be in state of purification when we are in the salah, what about the state of the purification of the heart? And also the physical purification, it's something that brings that attention to one's heart, because human beings are created to be forgetful, to be easy distracted. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it for the believers to prepare themselves for the salah in a way that they should start to detach themselves, to detach themselves from the worldly things, from the things that are means and not objectives in their life, to detach themselves from their work, to detach themselves from any attachment in the heart, from even families, from concerns, from anything, to seclude oneself. And this is a virtue and a recommended seclusion, or uzla, is when the person is about to make the salah. So that's why the importance of the conditions are very important for the salah itself. Some of it, if it's conditions, that means if it's not done, that means the salah is not valid. That's by the mercy of Allah. It's by the mercy of Allah that the rulings of the conditions of the salah is in such a way that if you don't do it, your salah is not valid. Why? So that you would give it importance. But if it's only recommended acts, as we see how we as human beings, we would act when there's a takalif, when there's things to be done, right? Human beings would tend to just not fulfill their duties if it's not a duty. If it's recommended, if it's an optional, and it's something that is not fitting or fulfilling one's desire. If your parents tell you, well, can you go pick up something, or can you clean the house, or can you wash dishes? But it's an optional thing, right? And you're fine whether you do it or you don't do it. Most likely, most people won't do it, right? But, maybe this is not a very, perfect example. But, when something is an obligation, then the person would do it, and that's best for him. Why? Because he would take the means to do it. And that's what the subject of the shurut, or the conditions of the salah. So one of which is, because of the time we won't finish them all, but one of the conditions of the salah is purification. It's for the Muslim to be pure from the major and the minor hadath. And we talked about al-hadath. Al-hadath is something that is a non-physical matter, a non-physical state that the body is in, that prevents the person from making salah or touching the Quran, which is basically the things that breaks the wudu. So the person has to be purified from this, whether it's the major one that necessitates taking ghusl or shower, or from the minor one that makes it necessary for the person to make wudu. So to be in state of purification, right? To be in state of wudu or after making ghusl. This is a condition for the salah. As we all know, if a person has no wudu, then is not in the state of wudu, is not in the state of tahara. It doesn't have to be wudu, because he can make ghusl, and that suffices for him. So that's why the ulama, they say tahara rather than saying wudu specifically. So to be in state of wudu. The other condition is the physical purification, as we talked about that in the tahara and in the beginning. And the purification is for the body to be pure, the body and the clothing and the spot that the person is praying upon. These three places has to be pure. That means it does not have any najasa on it. And najasa is not dirt. And najasa is something specific according to the deen of Allah that we are ordered to prevent having on our bodies or our clothing or in the spot that we are praying on. So dirt, or to what people consider to be dirty, but it's not najasa. This is something else, or something that might be even harmful, but it's not najasa. So it has to be according to what in the deen of Islam is considered to be najasat. And we talked about that, and it's specific najasat. So to purify the body from the body and the clothing and the place where a person prays on from the najasa. So this is the second condition of the salah. Number 3, we'll just mention them quickly, and then we can talk about them in some details next time, inshallah. So we'll talk about 6 conditions for the salah. The first one, to be in state of tahara. Number 2, to have purification of physical purification of one's body, the clothing and the place of the salah. Number 3, the time of the salah has to enter. So that's a condition for the salah. The time of the salah has to enter. Nobody is allowed to pray dhuhr before the time of dhuhr or so, except in some exceptions with regards to the jam'a, combining the salawat for whatever valid reason for it. So dukhul waqt al-salat, for the salah time to enter. And the 4th condition is to cover the awrah, to cover the awrah, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered to cover for men and women. And there's different limits for the awrah of men and women, and also in the salah. And we'll talk about that, inshallah. Number 5, to face the qibla, to face the qibla as a condition of the salah. Number 6 is the niyyah, is the intention, which is in the heart. Some ulama, they make the niyyah as part of the pillars of the salah, and some make it as a condition for the salah. The outcome of that differences of opinion is basically nothing. It's just a matter of classification. The niyyah, of course, is essential for the salah, whether you put it in the categories of conditions or in the category of pillars of the salah, it has to be there. But those who mention that it's in the conditions, why? Because one of the things that makes the conditions different than the pillars is that you have to be upon these conditions till the end of the ibadah, till the end of the salah, which is pillars, you change one from one pillar to the other. Al-Fatiha is a pillar, standing is a pillar, but you move from one pillar to make ruku', which is another pillar. But for the condition, you have to have it the whole entire time. So you have to face the qibla from the beginning to the end. You have to have intentions from the beginning to the end of the salah. So these are 6 pillars of, or 6 conditions of the salah. We'll continue them, inshallah ta'ala, next time and talk about them in some details, inshallah. I'll stop here, inshallah, if you have any questions for maybe 2-3 minutes, and then we'll continue next time. The first question, how long do you have to wait after sunrise to pray? After sunrise, the Prophet ﷺ forbade praying after Fajr all the way till the sun rises, the rising of it, of the distance or the length of a spear that they use in war, when you stick it in the ground from a distance. So it's usually something from 10 to 15 minutes. It changes from the summer to the winter. So 15 minutes, this is safe, but it's from 10 to 15 minutes after sunrise. What is the ruling on praying fard salah but not making iqamah? Iqamah is recommended, but it's not a pillar or a condition of the salah. So the salah, since the question is, what is the ruling? The salah is valid. But of course, the iqamah in the masjid is to be established. Otherwise, how people would know that the salah is to start? And if people are praying at home, it's recommended to make iqamah. If they don't make iqamah, the salah is valid. So different than adhan. Adhan is to be called in the, if there's a masjid in the locality gives adhan, then there's no need for people to make adhan for every salah in their homes or so. But if with the iqamah, it's to be done at all times, whether people are praying in the masjid or at home, even individually, they can still make the iqamah, but it's not a mandatory thing. All the steps, I'm not sure what all the steps means. To confirm, do you need to wudu again if you just did ghusl? So if you just made ghusl with what ghusl is, with the intentions of ghusl and with the intention of purification, you don't have to make wudu. Or all the steps of ghusl or janaba is the same ghusl for women, for menses. Washing the hand 3 times and then washing. Yes, the same recommended acts of ghusl, as you mentioned here, and then to make wudu, and then to wash the head, and then the right side, and then the right side and the left side, and then the head either way, and then the rest of the body. If you make mistake in the salah, we do sujood for that. Will you explain that in future? Naam, inshallah. Sujood al-sahw, it's of course something that's going to be explained, inshallah, but it's still, we're going to the rulings of the salah one step after another, inshallah. Barakallah fi. Are we still allowed to pray the obligatory prayer in home due to COVID? As long as the concern is still there. So people, those who fear for themselves, and the same ruling applies, inshallah. Those who have signs, they should stay away. And those who fear for themselves also, they can pray at home. If they fear for themselves or they fear for others, they can pray at home. But as we said, make sure that you don't miss the jama'ah. So to pray jama'ah at home for men. Jama'ah is mandatory for men, but it's not mandatory for women. So men should pray the fard in jama'ah, unless they're in a place where there's no other people that they can pray with, then it's okay in this case. The ghusl for Eid is the same as ghusl for janaba. Yes, the recommended ghusl has the same also etiquettes and manners, the same way as the fard ghusl. Ruling of Isha after midnight, it's if it's a necessity. If a person could not make it before midnight, then it's okay. But if he chooses to pray it after midnight, then it's not permissible. If we wake up late for Fajr Salah, it's okay to perform it as soon as we wake up. Yes, even if the sun is rising, because this is an obligation. And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man nama an salatin aw nasiha fa salatu hina yadhkuruha," that whoever sleeps for the salah or forgets it, then the time for it is once he remembers it. So once a person wakes up, he should immediately pray the salah. Now, the sunrise and the forbidden prayer there is the optional salah, not the mandatory salah. Allah. So we'll stop here, inshallah ta'ala, because of the next class. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وصحبه وسلم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.